Good evening. This is the August 2nd, 2023 regular session of the Gaithersburg Planning Commission. So the first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for July 5th, 2023 and July 19th, 2023. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes of July 5th, 2023 as presented in the record.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passes.
And Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the minutes for July 19th, 2023 is included in the record.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes too. Thank you. All right, let's look at the consent agenda. There's one item, AFP 96130-2023. Construction of a 400 square foot screened porch rear addition at 413 Midsummer Drive in the MXD zone, amendment to final plan. So, is anyone ready to make a motion?
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Is it, excuse that, let me back up. Are there any issues with this, any discussion?
None.
Nope.
All
Pretty
right.
straightforward.
So, ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda as included in the record.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No one here. That motion passes. All right, sign permit, that's coming up. Good evening.
Good evening. There we go.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. How
All
are you
right,
gentlemen?
so it's sign 30030-2023, First Watch building sign. And it's located at 802 Muddy Branch Road in the C2 general commercial zone. And it's a major waiver, all right?
Correct.
All right, so
All
good
right.
evening, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for being
Good.
here. This is the major waiver for sign permit application SIGN-30030-2023 for First Watch.
Okay,
As you stated, they are in the C2 zone at the Muddy Branch Square Shopping Center. So the application comes before the Planning Commission this evening in accordance with Section 24-213B,
okay.
which requires the Planning Commission to review and, if possible, grant a major waiver for the proposed sign. The sign permit application requires a major waiver from the Planning Commission in order for the tenant to have a second principal building sign.
Okay,
Section 24-210B for 6B of the Development Code states that multiple tenant buildings, such as shopping centers, must not exceed one principal building sign per tenant. The image on the screen highlights the shopping center in red, and the blue box locates First Watch, a corner unit in the shopping center. Here to present the application is Kent Drinker from Arc Science.
hello, how are you?
Excellent. I'm fine. How are you gentlemen?
Good.
Well.
So I would like to thank the commission for hearing the request, and I certainly appreciate the assistance from Sam and the planning staff for helping out navigate the process. Just to avoid any confusion, I don't work for First Watch. We're the local installation provider. So certainly we represent First Watch and the fabricator of the signs, but if there's any questions about their food, I can't respond to that particular.
We got that part down anyway.
Just a quick overview. I'll reference the slides as appropriate. Basically, First Watch is updating their branding. We're doing projects for a number of different locations across the state. And what they would like to do, and they're proposing to do, is maintain the two signs currently at the site in the same locations. I'll go through some stipulations here. So given the unique shape of the building, it is a corner location, as you see on the slide. And views which we'll discuss from the ingress and egress routes, they would believe, or First Watch believes, that it would create a hardship if they were only permitted to have one sign.
Okay,
So they basically want to retain the two same signs they have now in the same places, same fabrication, same mounting strategy, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to go to the second slide. Oh, sure. So I'm going to try to do my best to review the waiver criteria. Feel free to stop me if you have any specific questions, and we can certainly go over any issues at the end too. Touching on the wayfinding issues here, you see the restaurant Can I point here? I don't know if there's a point here. So here's the restaurant right here in the corner. This is the primary sign right here, facing this direction. This would be the secondary sign right here, subject to the waiver. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yep.
Basically, if you're coming down Muddy Branch from almost either direction, either this way following the red arrow or that way following the other arrow, due to the curvature of the road, the location of some of the standalone businesses adjacent to First Watch, certainly some trees and landscaping, and just the general orientation of the property and how it's set up in terms of getting in there. If they had one sign, or were only allowed to have one sign, the visibility of the property would be significantly impacted. So it would be difficult to find your way in or out of the property if they only had one sign, permitted to have one sign. So the second sign, I know it's been reviewed by the traffic folks on your end, does not present a danger to traffic, vehicles or pedestrians. And a secondary sign on this side of the restaurant here would certainly help with a clear identification of the restaurant space and how to actually get in and out of the property.
Well,
Again,
can you point that out again, please?
Yeah. This is the subject
Yeah,
elevation right
right,
here
right.
on this
Mhm.
side. Yeah.
Fronting Muddy Branch.
Fronting Muddy Branch Road.
Right.
Yes, correct. Yep. So I'll probably use it interchangeably. This would be the front sign
Right.
over the front entrance, and this is the secondary sign on that side of the restaurant, adjacent to the parking lot, fronting
Okay.
Muddy Branch Road.
Right. Okay.
Pretty straightforward. I mean, just some visualizations of approaching the property. And again, I'm touching on visibility and wayfinding needs. Secondary sign, this is just kind of a flow chart in terms of driving down the road itself. So the secondary sign is very necessary due to the restaurant's location and obstructions that impact visibility of the primary sign from the right of way. So it is difficult as you drive by. If you don't catch one sign, you're probably going to miss the property. So two signs are almost a necessity with the orientation, and also how the shopping center is constructed. Can't really change how it's built, can't change the corner location of the property, but we can help out with visibility with the required signage.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, gentlemen,
Do you have additional?
right, anything, Mr. Copeland, anything else?
Yeah, did you have additional comments about this presentation?
No,
Okay.
no.
Just have one question, Mr. Chair.
All
No.
right,
Do you guys
so,
have any specific?
you all have any?
Just one question. Do we have an approximate grade differential between Muddy Branch at the center of that road along the entry drive into the site and the actual entry door of the restaurant?
I don't, no, not
Yeah.
offhand, yeah.
It's, I would say it's about 3.5 feet, by the way,
Yeah,
which is substantial.
yeah, yeah.
Is there are two existing signs there now. How does the new signs compare dimensionally, to what's there existing?
Great question. The secondary sign, which is the subject of the waiver, is actually slightly smaller than the existing sign that's currently on the building. So I think the difference is approximately 10 square feet, so a little bit smaller. The front sign over the front entrance is exactly the same square footage. Yeah.
And just for clarity, I know this is in the packet, but for anybody listening, the current signage configuration was approved and perfectly legal and allowed by right under the previous sign ordinance when it was put up in 2014, correct? So this is really a matter of our updated signage ordinance making something non-compliant or something require a waiver that previously didn't.
Correct.
Okay. So, do we have anyone that might want to, is there anyone that
You
might
may
want
want
to
to
make a
ask the
comment?
presenter in the
Okay.
public that.
Yeah,
wants
is there
to
anyone here
provide-
in the public who might want to comment on this? Don't all jump up at once. Thank you.
And I would recommend we run the video on
All right.
online testimony. There are a few people
Can we
online.
run the video on attendees commenting on items, please?
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Thank you.
and we currently have no one with their hand raised.
Great, okay. Thank you. All right, Mr. Copeland, would you like to wrap up?
Sure. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report findings and recommendation, grant a major waiver for sign -30030-2023, finding it in compliance with section 24213B of the City Code.
All right, thank you. So, gentlemen, is there anything else we need to discuss?
Yeah, I think we ought to make it clear that there's some very unique conditions for this particular tenant that make this waiver, in my mind, approvable. It's not just a corner unit; it actually sits down below the road. So there are actual visual, differentials that's unique to this property. So a different corner unit that sits up at grade may be visible and not need two signs. I also want to point out that it's really critical that there's two primary elevations. There's one with a door, but architecturalized, both elevations are primary elevations. They're very well designed. They present to the street. Only one is pedestrian friendly with an arcade. Right. So that's where the front door should be, understandably. But that secondary, what the applicant is calling a secondary, their second elevation is actually a very prime architectural elevation and presents itself to the street, even though it's lower. Yeah. So I think these are unique conditions to this application that I think allow for the waiver.
I think the other thing to note, in addition to all of that is not entirely unique, but supports the need for this, is this shopping center and specifically doesn't have a large monument sign out at the street that lists all of the major retailers. A lot of our
they do have one, and
they
it's
have
actually
one.
in the way.
Well, but they have one, and
the
one they have though only lists Giant.
Yeah, right. It only lists Giant.
I think there's a couple on there.
Wow, I can only see the.
But to the road, you're right, and I was going to make that comment. You see it, and then you can technically ride past, and then go, "Oh, there it is," and you're past it.
Yeah.
If this was another shopping center where there was a multi-tenant sign that provided that wayfinding, it'd probably be a little bit of a different calculus. But I totally see the necessity
and
for it.
we did long time ago approve those two pad sites that do some additional visual impact for the. But that's for the entire line of tenants as well. So we wouldn't, those don't require unique conditions that would have
this passes but this passes a reasonableness test for me. And I was thinking the same thing that you mentioned about you can see the Giant sign, and then when you get past it, you're almost driving. You could technically drive past First Watch and go, "Oh, there it is." Let me turn around. Yeah. So I don't,
I think I saw something after you passed it. Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty, so are we ready for a motion?
All right, Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report findings and recommendation, grant a major waiver for sign 30030-2023, finding it in compliance with section 24-213B of the City Code.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so we're going to recommendations to mayor and city council. So the first one is MP 1-23, the Housing Element Planning Commission approval and recommendations. Recommendations to the city council and mayor and city council. So, with staff is Kirk Eby and Laura Buffon. Hi, how y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
We're going to tag team a little bit here, so Laura's going to start, and then I'll take over about halfway through just to confuse everyone.
Great, okay.
Good evening. This is Planning Commission approval and recommendation to the Mayor and City Council of the Housing Element application MP-1-23, which is an amendment to the city's master plan. And I know staff has been before you multiple times with this document, but tonight we'll mostly be focusing on revisions that have been made to the draft since the public hearing.
Okay.
So just a little bit of background. I think you've seen this slide like 12 times now, but the state of Maryland passed a bill in 2019 requiring all master or comprehensive plans to include a housing element, which must address low-income and workforce housing, but as you've seen in the proposed draft, it takes a broader approach to also include housing policies in general in the city. And this slide just goes over the Planning Commission's role in the master plan process according to the state land use article. So the Planning Commission must approve the element and recommend adoption to the mayor and city council. And then the mayor and council can only adopt the element as recommended or not adopt. Otherwise, they must start the public hearing process over again and restart the record. So tonight, staff is asking for one motion that both approves the housing element and recommends adoption by the mayor and city council.
Okay.
The draft housing element was released for the required 60-day public comment period on March 9th, 2023. The joint public hearing for the element was held on June 5th, 2023, and during the hearing, staff recommended some edits to the draft based on comments received and received support for the draft element. And then the Planning Commission's record closed at 5 p.m. on July 21st, 2023. So the Planning Commission draft that you'll make a motion on this evening was included as Exhibit 19 in your packets. And this slide lays out the structure of the element. It hasn't changed. There was one minor change. We did add one section, an appendix, at the end, but the other sections remain the same. And then at the bottom of the slide is just the vision statement that we included in the draft housing element that states that the City of Gaithersburg strives to ensure all current and future residents from all socioeconomic populations have access to a diverse range of quality home ownership and rental housing choices that are affordable, equitable, and livable. And these next few slides will highlight some of the main changes that have been made to the draft since the joint public hearing. So staff made some minor changes, things like grammar and clarification, which I won't get into detail this evening. But all of the changes were documented in the memo provided as Exhibit 20 in your packets.
You spell is wrong.
Oh, did I?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
You give everybody a heart attack.
Trying to throw me off. Okay, so first major change is to the glossary. We added a few terms. These are terms that were referenced in the document, but staff realized we weren't defining them, or they came out of comments from Maryland Department of Planning. So new definitions for Commission on Common Ownership Communities, Common Ownership Community, low-income housing, priority populations, and workforce housing. And I just want to note the new definitions for low-income housing and workforce housing are based off the state land use article. This was in response to comments from Maryland Department of Planning because those definitions differ slightly from the classifications we use to determine eligibility for our affordable housing programs in the city. And staff put in a footnote to explain that. Some of the new narrative, the key points. First section we added discussed the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments regional housing targets that were released in 2019 and how the city is contributing to that. So with recent project approvals, the city is forecast to add close to 2,000 additional housing units above what the 2019 forecast showed. So we're already outpacing what we thought we would have when these targets were released. Next, we added some discussion about the importance of monitoring the need for community facilities and infrastructure that support new residential development. And these are things that go beyond the city's requirements in our EPFO. So things like libraries, employment centers, to support new residential growth. And then in a few different places, staff added references to various state and county funding programs that city residents can take advantage of. Staff also added a discussion of equity emphasis areas. This is something that was referenced in the document previously, but we didn't have really an explanation of what they were. So staff added an explanation that they're census tracts identified by Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments to have higher concentrations of low-income individuals or traditionally disadvantaged population groups. And we also added a map, which you'll see on a future slide. And then the last major narrative addition was discussion of proposed changes to the city's GALP, the Home Buyer Assistance Loan Program, and specifically the need to update the boundaries of the standard and opportunity areas, which have different funding allocations based on median household income and home value. But Kirk will get a little more into that on a future slide. So now I'll turn it over to Kirk Eby to go over some more of the specific data and maps that were added since the public hearing.
Okay. Once again, good evening. So we did add this new data that's shown on the screen here. So the first one is that we did add some information about single-family detached home lots. In the bigger nationwide discussion about planning and zoning, there's a lot of talk of revisiting single-family detached lots because in a lot of cities they make up a significant portion of the homes in the cities. But in Gaithersburg, that's not the case, so we thought we would add this information so people can understand why we're not targeting single-family detached housing areas in the city, because we don't have a lot of it, so we want to kind of preserve what we've got. So we did note that, out of the city's total land area, the single-family home lots take up about 23% of that area. And in terms of the proportion of overall city units, they're only about 11% of the total land area. So units also in common ownership communities, as Laura mentioned, we did add some definitions for that. And then we also noted that about 86% of the units that are owned in the city are actually part of either a homeowner association or a condo association.
Did you come across any data that tracks that comparing to national trends, just out of curiosity?
Which data, like the proportion?
HOA percentages.
Oh, the HOA percentage. We did not. We could reach out to, say, Montgomery County or some of the other local jurisdictions and maybe try to get some data from them.
I don't think it's critical for the master plan element. It was more a curiosity just based on the statistics.
Yeah, and I'm sure it varies by the age of the city. I mean, Gaithersburg is a relatively young city in the bigger scheme of things. I imagine if you looked at the city of Frederick, of course, they've built a lot in the city of Frederick. So it'll be interesting to see. But like city of Baltimore, for example, I imagine there's a much lower proportion of homes that are part of an HOA or a condo association because so many of those were built before those devices were really popular. Yeah. But yeah, staff could look into that if that was something that
Yeah, if it's something that's easily attainable, I'm just curious how we track to others.
We wouldn't really be able to add any information to the housing element.
No,
at this point, but
I don't think it's critical for the for the
So as we mentioned with the common ownership communities, we did create a map to show where the locations of those common ownership communities are in the city. And looking at this map now. We didn't sort of highlight the other residential areas that are not part of one, which maybe we should have, but again, 88% of the units are part of one of those. So really, there's a couple of areas here on the map which, again, are not highlighted, but let's see if I can get the mouse to work here. So there's the older part of Browns Addition, there's Deer Park behind City Hall here, there's the historic district north of Old Town. So those are sort of the areas that, and there's also some of the area behind the high school. Those are the areas that don't have HOAs, but the rest of the city primarily, for the most part does. I mean, there's a couple on the west side of Gaithersburg also, Pheasant Run and I want to say Diamond Courts, although I think it's called something different now. So those are a couple of other areas. But most of the units, again, especially the townhouses, all of those are part of an HOA. Yeah. So really what you're seeing that's not part of an HOA would be just the detached houses. The other map we added was the equity emphasis areas from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and these are those tracts that were identified as the equity emphasis areas. And then in conjunction with the narrative about the home loan program for Gaithersburg, we did add these two maps. The one on the left shows the existing opportunity and standard funding areas. And the map on the right shows the proposed changes to those areas. So the one on the left was really developed just using primarily just median income. And the one on the right, we sort of rethought the approach and decided that it should be some kind of a ratio between the median housing value and the median income. And the other thing we did in the element is we recommend that this not be a static map. So while it should be updated as part of this element, we think it should be revisited, every 50 years. So when the census releases new information in 2025 and then 2030, 2035, et cetera, then it'd be an opportunity to look at this and potentially update it again to reflect, things have changed. So that it's not just a static map. So that it helps. The whole point of this is to help people, to give people a little bit more assistance to move into areas that are a little bit higher priced housing or those areas of the city where there's fewer lower income families living there. We also added 2 new recommendations. So these were added to the city programs and policies section. The first one was to identify areas of the city that could benefit from federal and/or state projects and funding programs. The second one is to explore ways, including access to existing city, Montgomery County, state of Maryland resources, to proactively support existing homeowner association, condominium boards, and common ownership communities with respect to affordability, revitalization, and equity. These efforts would help preserve the community's relative housing affordability. I think the first of those recommendations was in response to state comments. The second one is in response to some of the council's concerns about HOA communities and the idea that sometimes those fees, when they go up, or if there's some sort of assessment needed to, especially in a condominium, since they replace all the roof, then that can hit homeowners, and so we added this language to help identify additional funding to help with those types of issues. And then there was 3 recommendations that were modified. I believe all of these were also in the city programs and policies sections. So one was, the first one is in addition to consider the use of city-provided grants or low or no interest loans to owners of existing homes, both rental and ownership. Then we also had this language that identifies the possible sources of funding for those types of grants. And the second one, consider ways to strengthen the city's GALP program. We added another part, again, about periodically revisiting that standard and opportunity area map and then updating it every 5 years or so. And then the last one, support neighborhood level organizing and community development. We added some language about informational and financing programs just to clarify what types of programs would be available. And then for the new appendices, we did add 2 new appendices. The first one is a breakdown of the city households using those land use article definitions for low income and moderate income. And there's actually 4 tables in there, and those are, I believe, on page, I don't think I marked it on here. I didn't. Well,
They're at the end.
They're towards the end, yeah. But there's actually 4 different tables in there, I believe, from that, just to give a little more clarity. And then the other appendix we added was we looked at the Housing and Transportation Index, which is provided by, I can't remember the group, but we did look at that. We added that for information. We also added a footnote, I believe, that discusses, whether this is really as accurate as it could be for Gaithersburg, or at least that there are some concerns. Staff has some concerns with the map, because as you'll notice, it shows the higher housing and transportation income costs as a percentage of income being mostly on the west side of Gaithersburg, which anecdotally we would have expected that to be more on the east side of Gaithersburg. So, it could be correct, but we had some concerns with it. But we thought it was good to include it as another facet of the plan. So finally, we arrive at the staff recommendation. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission make the following motion. So staff recommends the Planning Commission approve Master Plan Resolution PCR-MP-1-23, which approves that Master Plan Amendment, MP-1-23, also known as the housing element of the Master Plan, and recommend adoption of that housing element by the Mayor and City Council. And staff is, of course, available for any questions.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I think kudos to staff for a very thorough, detailed, and long and inclusive process to get us to this point. I think scrolling through the actual element itself it's really an impressive document. The graphics, the way information is presented is a real testament to our staff and all the effort that's gone into it. So I think it's a great document.
It's outstanding. Do you remember when it used to be all text?
Yes.
How wonderful it is to see diagrams and not just for the stimulation and break up some of that text, but also it's just a wonderful way to get data across as efficiently and effectively as possible. And people read things in different ways and different emotions, and have it both of those inputs and for data in our element or all of our elements now is just outstanding. So again, it's another thing that you guys have produced that I get to go and say, look what we did, and you need to step up your game. So it's great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was very happy and pleased that you had the emphasis on the equity elements, and I really think that's something we really need to kind of focus on. So I was happy to see that, and I'm happy that you're thinking about it now and then into the future. So I'm happy that you'll be looking at that again later on, 50 years from now when I'm dust, but still you'll be looking at it. So.
got to lay the groundwork, right?
Yeah, got to lay the
Got to
groundwork.
put the data down, lay the groundwork,
That's
and
right.
it'll grow from here.
Right,
Yeah, that's
right.
great.
Now, I know our record closed. Have you finished your wrap up?
I have.
Okay, all right. I know you closed, the record closed on July 21st, I believe.
Yes.
You said. And if there is anyone that would like to make a comment.
Since the
because
record's closed, we should.
we can't do that. That's what I thought, but
Doesn't help.
yeah, that's what okay. Thank you for that correction. So, all right, so we need to move
Yep.
forward. So, any other additional discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
Wonderful. Send it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission approve PCR-MP-1-23, a resolution of the Planning Commission approving an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Gaithersburg, the housing element, MP-1-23, and recommend adoption of said element by the mayor and city council.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and you can take a drink since you have so much to Well, thank you very much, okay?
Thank
Thanks,
you, and
guys.
thank you for the
Okay.
kind
Great.
words.
Thank you so much for the great work. Alrighty, we have one more recommendation to mayor and city council, and that is U-9627-2023 temporary vehicle storage for CarMax at 16383 Shady Grove Road in the MXD Mixed Use Development Zone. Recommendation to mayor and city council. And staff is Jasmine Forbes. Hi, Jasmine. Good to see you. Miss Forbes. Miss Forbes. And who do you have with us? We've seen these. Well, I've seen you before. How you doing?
Aaron Gerard with Miles and Stockbridge.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm Brian Pulsifer. I'm with CarMax.
Oh, I can see.
Yeah. I have to wear the gear.
I do want to say this is the most color coordinated.
Yeah, you
profile.
surely
Yeah.
are. Everybody,
Yeah.
y'all called each other at night and said, we're wearing dark
That's
blue.
So good
Okay,
evening.
thank you.
So staff is here to present temporary use application U-9627-2023. As shown on the screen, the subject property is located at 16383 Shady Grove Road. The applicant's requesting temporary use of the existing lot to store vehicles for the CarMax dealership.
Okay.
This application comes before the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-178G1, which requires the Commission to provide recommendation to the Mayor and City Council for temporary use applications.
Okay.
And now I will have Aaron Gerard do the presentation this evening.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I won't repeat. You know where the property is. I'm sure you're familiar with it. To the, well, we'll call it west on this slide. It's a little bit offset, but there's a parking lot that's not related to the CarMax use. I think it's related to the transfer station, which is to the south. To the right of the parking lot that is the subject of the application is the existing CarMax dealership, and to the right of that is a post office. And to the north, obviously, is both Shady Grove Road and 370. This is just a blow up. You can get a sense of how the lot that is the subject of the application relates to the existing CarMax dealership. And it's ironic that this picture shows so many cars because that is the issue that we're facing. So the sketch plan, this entire, everything on your screen was annexed into the city. It's approximately 13 acres, was annexed in the city in 2012. And then a year later, a sketch plan and SDP was approved for the CarMax site proper, which is on this side. So again, like on your slide, it would be the eastern side. The side that is subject to the temporary use was noted as a future office commercial restaurant site, but there was also a note that the parking field was to remain as shown. This again is just the SDP, same thing, just shown in a different manner. They were approved at the same time. This is the proposal. So the outline of red is the existing asphalt parking area that CarMax is seeking to be able to park vehicles in a secure lot. There would be a chain link fence, which I'll show you the detail in a second, around the parking lot. On the bottom right of your screen, you can see an existing gate that's there now, and then some of the concrete barriers. Again, this is just the fence detail and the concrete barrier detail that we supplemented the application to include. That is really it. You have in your packet or attached to the packet our statement of justification that just explains that over the 20 years that CarMax has been operating, the demand has grown and they really need this overflow space for their parking.
Okay.
And we're available for any questions.
Does CarMax own the lot, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
it's all part of the same ownership.
Mm-hmm.
But it was dedicated for, you said, a building?
So it's part of it, when it was annexed into the city, it's in the MXD zone.
Right.
So at the time, CarMax didn't envision needing all of it. So they took approximately 10 acres to operate the dealership on, reserved this 3-acre parcel as a future development pad.
Right.
At the time, there was a lot of talk about, what this corridor would look like, research and development, office, commercial. So it's pretty vague as to what can go there. It has to be commercial under current conditions. There's a covenant on the property that it can't be residential due to its proximity to the transfer station.
Okay.
So it's, that would be subject to a future site plan, but there's just not the market demand yet. As you've probably heard, the office market's a little soft right now. So to say it mildly.
Right.
So there's just not the demand for them to, look into redeveloping that property. So they're looking for an interim 1-year use.
And so is there any, aside from the fence, or is it going to be repaved? Is the paving area going to be expanded? It's just all, or is
The
it all-
paving exists,
Okay.
so they would just, park on top of the existing paving.
Pavement with little pieces of grass poking through.
And it's not a lot that they're having customers come out and look at cars. That's,
And that's kind of what I wanted to ask that question, because you said it's temporary vehicle. So this is like is it going to be just a staging area for cars?
That's correct. It's part of our, we call it considered a back of house operation,
Right,
so we
right.
won't be taking customers out.
So
there.
they won't be going, and you've got those big gigantic concrete blocks out there anyway,
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is for associates only.
Right. Okay.
As far as lighting, is there existing lighting on the lot?
There's existing lighting and it's adequate to our standards.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the new fence is not taking any of the trees down, the existing trees. Yeah.
No.
Not that I really. Such an isolated property.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of fences and concrete barriers, but there is no neighbor to be concerned about.
So
And 1 year seems judicious to staff. Jasmine, do you think this is a reoccurring 1-year approval?
So this approval is just for 1 year. If
Yeah.
CarMax needs to come back for another year, then they'll be before you.
And we'll keep it to a year, you think?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. Alrighty, so you want to wrap up?
Okay. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibit submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings, and recommendation, recommend approval of U-9627-2023 to the Mayor and City Council, finding it in compliance with Section 24-178G1 of the City Code.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any more discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
No.
Nothing more for me.
Okay.
All right, in that case,
You
Mr.
could ask for public comment on this one if you'd like. There are some people online.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, thank you.
That's exciting for him. So that's good.
Yeah, I love it. So, anyone in the audience, other than you two, who those people behind you in the blue, anyone who wants to speak on this, that's in the audience? No?
Please raise your hand.
Okay, anyone online?
If anyone wants to speak online on this application, they should hit the
They
raise
should
hand
hit
button.
Yeah,
And I'm not seeing
you're
it.
not seeing anyone. Oh, okay. Alrighty, thank
Sorry,
you
Danny.
so much. We are ready for a motion.
All right, Mr. Chair, in that case, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibit submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings, and recommend approval of U-9627-2023 to the Mayor and City Council, finding it in compliance with Section 24-178G1 of the City Code.
Second.
All right, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
much,
Thank you.
good luck. All righty, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Forbes, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, so Now it's time for From the Commission. Anything from you?
Nope, nothing for me this evening.
Nothing for me.
Nothing from me, believe it or not. All right, staff, do you have anything for us?
All I have tonight is a reminder, the next planning commission meeting is September 6th.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the week off. Mr. Director, you have anything for us?
I just have a shout out tonight for Greg Mann. Because in addition to the normal pipeline of plans that are flowing through the Community Planning Division, plus managing 4 planners, he's taken on 2 mammoth efforts, which I know you're aware of, but the Retool Gaithersburg, along with Rob Robinson, of course, is massive. And then the WRS does plan to file 1 single schematic development plan on the Lake Forest property, which is a massive effort.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And we have 3-4 multiple meetings per week focused on Lake Forest right now. And so just a shout out to Greg tonight.
Oh, Greg's great. He's amazing.
Better than a raise. He's a good actor.
He's always there for us, so we appreciate you. Okay. All right. Counselor, anything for us?
No, not tonight.
Well, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Alrighty, so with that, we are adjourned.
Bang it.